Hey, what is going on, you fake Flaffy? So Fusion Arts, the Japanese set, has been fully revealed. So we're going to be taking a look at that today. And I'm going to be giving my thoughts on any of the cards that I think are competitively viable or just interesting at the very least. And I'm going to be giving them a rating out of 1 to 5. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. The first card coming up here, I'm forgetting it off the top of my head, but when we roll past it, I'll remember. All right, Serena V. It's got that Queen's Order attack 20 damage plus for a grass and a colorless. Discard any number of your bench Pokemon's attack does 40 damage for each bench Pokemon you discarded in this way. Weak to fire, to retreat cost, 200 HP. I think I just mentioned that. I don't remember. But yeah, in standard, I don't think this thing is very viable at all. And even in expanded with access to Skyfield, I still don't think it's that great. But so I'll give it a 1 out of 5 for potential play in expanded. But even if it is played, it's going to be one of those decks where it's just kind of going to be fun for a little while. Not going to be a truly competitive deck, I don't think. But who knows? Maybe this will end up being, we're getting like a Serena V Max or whatever. I don't know if that's already been revealed or not. I don't think so, but it could be. Up next, we got the Chandelor V Max, starting with the Chandelor V. We got the Confusion. Your opponent's active is now confused. And then we have for one fire, fire colorless, 40 times the amount of trainer cards in your opponent's hand. So Poltergeist, really just, you know, it's the V. It's really all about the V Max, Chandelor V Max, 320 HP. Binding Heat. As long as this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, your opponent can't play any Pokemon tool cards from their hand. So the ability, nothing ridiculously strong. Of course, if you put this ability on any Pokemon, I'm sure they would love to have it, but it's not one of those abilities where it's like going to be that game-changing overall. I don't think. There could be some cute situations that come up where this takes effect, you know, stopping air balloons from being put into play, or Tool Jammer, so your tools don't get shut down. So there could be some cute ways where this is utilized. But I don't think it's not game-changing, hugely game-changing. And then for Fire Colors, it's got Max Poltergeist, 70 times the number of trainer cards you find in your opponent's hand, Water Weakness, and 2 retreat cost once again. So 70 damage from a Poltergeist is the new highest damage we've seen from a Poltergeist attack. Poltergeist attacks, of course, are nothing new overall, but I don't see this being good enough to be really a top viable competitive deck. I think maybe if there is something you could play this alongside, like Chandelor plus something else that kind of pressures your opponent as an attacker, because if you only have access to Max Poltergeist as your main attack, your opponent will just kind of constantly dump their trainer cards turn after turn and make it very hard for you to actually do a reasonable amount of damage with Max Poltergeist. Of course, if more cards come out, they allow us to kind of interact with what our opponent has in their hand by putting cards from like their discard piles or the hand or something like that. And then maybe this card could see some play. But as of right now, we really only have Marnie, and that's only putting your opponent up to 4 cards. So then your max damage every single turn is just going to be 280 damage. But that's only if they draw 4 trainer cards. So I don't really see this thing being hugely viable on its own. Can't think of anything that I would go pair with really well as well. So I don't expect a ton out of the Chandelor V Max. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 overall, because it's got a good attack. The ability's cute, but it's just not quite there, I don't think, to see any consistent play in the format. Up next, we got the Oricorio. This has 90 HP. It's basic. It's got that ability Fervent Lesson. And as long as it's in play, your opponent's Fusion Strike Pokemon, oh, not your opponent's, your Fusion Strike Pokemon take 20 less damage from your opponent's attacks. But you can't apply more than 1 Fervent Lesson ability per turn. So you can't have multiple Oricorio in play and then taking minus 40, 3 of them minus 60, and so on to your fusion Pokemon. And it's got an attack with a Passionate Drop, Fire Colorless, put 5 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you like. So actually a pretty decent attack. I don't know, like, you won't use this very often, but it's a pretty solid attack overall to have on something that you're using as like purely a support Pokemon. Weak to water, and then only 1 retreat cost, which is nice as well. So this card I'm going to give a 3 out of 5. And the reason for that is because the card is just kind of good no matter what. Even if fusion decks are good when they do release, even if fusion decks are good, and this card never sees play because the math never lines up for the matchups in the format to ever want to play this Oricorio, this is still just a good ability. If this just said your fire type Pokemon take 20 less damage, or your water type Pokemon, or your grass, or your lightning, or whatever, that would just be good, right? And then depending on the format, depending on what matchups are popular, when the numbers just kind of line up and like, oh, taking 20 less is just really, really good right now for just this matchup or these multiple matchups, then you just play the card, right? So I give this thing a 3 out of 5. It's just a good card, but it is very meta and format dependent. What is popular, and is it worth putting it in? Is it actually, does the damage reduction actually matter game to game? And if it doesn't, it won't see play. If it does, it will see play. But at the end of the day, still a good card. So yeah, 3 out of 5 for this Fire Oricorio. Moving right along, we got the Huntail and the Gore Vice. I don't actually know how to say the Gore Vice name. We'll start with the Huntail. It's got that single strike jammer. As long as this Pokemon is in play, your opponent's single strike Pokemon require colorless more energy to use attacks. The attack's not very good for water colorless 80, weak to lightning, 1 more tree cost, and it is a stage 1, of course. So you do have to evolve it up to get this effect. So if single strike Pokemon get very, very, very good, I could see this being played in multiple different decks potentially. But they have to be really, really good. And then you'd have to still want to play this, because even if single strike decks are very good, like if this was available now to be played, single strike is pretty good right now. The Umbreon and the single strike Urshifu, pretty good. But you probably wouldn't play this Huntail even if it was currently viable, right? And this is the best single strike has ever been in the format. So yeah, I don't see this card being all that great overall. I don't see it seeing play. Even if single strike gets better than it is currently, still wouldn't see this thing seeing play. So I'm going to give the Huntail a 1 out of 5 here. But there is, it's still a cool ability. Still has some potential there. And if single strike does really get that good, this becomes an option. Now we got the Gore Vice with the Rapid Strike Cancer. Stage 1, 110 HP. As long as this Pokemon is in play, your opponent's Rapid Strike Pokemon have no abilities. Once again, it just feels like it's too much to try and get a stage 1 in play to try and get this effect of preventing Rapid Strike abilities, like trying to make the single strike Pokemon take 1 more energy on the Huntail. The Gore Vice, it would shut down stuff like the quick shooting from the Inteleon that's super popular right now, and I could see that being a reason to play the Gore Vice, but you have to first get out your Clan Pearl, which could get KO'd before you even get to the Gore Vice, or they could just go KO your Gore Vice with a boss, and then they get access to their abilities again, and they never really cared. So yeah, once again, 1 out of 5 for this one as well. Still got a cool ability overall, like an interesting ability, but 1 out of 5 overall. I don't see it seeing play, but I guess if quick shooting gets that much more popular by the time this thing releases, or throughout the time that this card is, standard legal, it could see play, I guess, overall. And then 1 more tree cost. Also weak to lightning, and the attack, yeah, once again, nothing to write home about the attack. Water colorless, 50 damage, heal 30 from this Pokemon. You only have 110 HP. You're not taking damage, you're KO'd. All right, the Pukyu Yumu, basic Pokemon, 80 HP. Weak to lightning, 1 more tree cost. The attack, irrelevant with the water colorless Knuckle for 50. The ability, insanely good ability. Really unique, really different. And I don't think it's going to be good in standard, though, but I do give it a 3 out of 5. The ability, once on your turn, if this card is in your hand, you may put this card on the bottom of your deck, then draw 1 card. You can't use more than 1 of these abilities during your turn. So it kind of just becomes a way for you to almost, not quite make your deck infinite, but it's kind of like an infinite Judge Whistle or something like that. I think this card is very interesting, very cool and unique ability. I don't think it'll be very good in standard. However, in expanded, I could see this card being very good in some kind of control type archetype or something like that. So I mean, we'll see what happens with it. I give it a 3 out of 5 overall, just because the ability is so different, so cool, so unique. And expanded, I think there's definitely a lot of potential for this thing. We'll have to wait and see if anything comes of it or not, but it's there for sure. It's there for sure. And who knows, maybe it's better in standard than I'm giving it credit for. I don't see it working out in standard, but you never know. All right, Bolton V Max. Let's take a look at the V first. 200 HP. Smash turn, 1 lightning, 30 damage. You may switch it with one of your benched Pokemon. Okay, and then lightning colors, 120. This attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So I could see you maybe playing one of these alongside like 3 of the old Bolton in a Bolton V Max deck, because it just doesn't have as much utility through its attacks. But I would maybe play one of these because of the Electro Bull. So if you hit something really hard but don't quite get the knockout, like if you have, if you're something for like 300 damage, then they put the V Max to the bench, you can go, 30 snipe, clean it up, something like that. You don't need like boss for your turn. So I could see maybe playing one of these alongside 3 of the current Bolton that we have. But even then, I'm not 100% sure you'd play any of this, to be honest. We'll have to wait and see, but I feel like the old Bolton is going to be the better Bolton to go with. And of course, they all evolve into the Bolton V Max, 320 HP, Lightning Colorless, Lightning Storm, 30 damage plus 30 more for each lightning attached to all of your Pokemon. So similar to Shadow Rider's attack, but it's 30 plus instead of 10 plus. So you're going to get to those 320 and 330 numbers for 1 energy less than Shadow Rider would need. So that could be a difference maker. Obviously, you pair this with Flaffy, which one of the struggles with Shadow Rider can kind of be finding your Pokemon. Because you need to you only play 4 Shadow Rider V, 4 Shadow Rider V Max. So you need to find like both sets of your 4 ofs as soon as possible. Whereas with something like the Bolton V Max, potentially you're going to have the 4 Bolton V Max, or maybe even a 4-3. And they also have a 4-4 Flaffy. So you have like more Pokemon you're trying to find, so it becomes easier as you draw into a couple of them. You can quick ball for the others and so on, so it kind of might flow together a little bit better at accelerating energy into play. And of course, you get to play like level ball and stuff to find your Flaffies and Mareeps and so on. And then the second attack is Lightning Colorless for a max bolt of 240. Can't use it during your next turn. Fighting weakness to retreat cost, but it's always nice to have an attack for pretty reasonable cost that KOs Vs, because you can really put the pressure on your opponent on, as soon as turn 2 if you go first. So I think this card definitely has some potential. Gonna give it a 4 out of 5. Not 100% sold on it definitely being great, but it's got some potential here for sure. So yeah, Bolton V Max gets the 4 out of 5 from me, and we'll have to wait and see in the end how good it actually is. Going on down to Toxicity with the ability Max Downer. This ability only works if all of your Pokemon in play are fusion Pokemon. As long as this Pokemon is in play, the HP of your opponent's VMAX Pokemon is 30 less. So basically, kind of like just like a constant triple plus power, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, making the VMAX HP 30 less is pretty good overall, to be honest. That's pretty strong just to kind of have around on your board. And just be like, all right, you have 30 less HP. Now I have to do that much less damage. And then once again, this is going to kind of come down to what deck are you playing? How much damage are you doing with your fusion Pokemon? Because all your Pokemon in play have to be fusion. And is it worth to play a stage 1 for this ability to like get 2-hit KOs or even 1-hit KOs, right? Then yeah, Lightning Colorless, the attack pretty irrelevant, 90 damage, fighting weakness 2 retreat cost. So that'll be kind of the question. How much damage are you doing? Is reducing their HP by 30, making it so you're 1-hit KOing or more cleanly 2-hit KOing them? That'll kind of be the question for these fusion decks. And if they want to include Toxicity, give a 2 out of 5 overall. I think it's a little bit better than stuff like the Huntail and stuff, because VMAXs are definitely going to be consistently prevalent in most, if not all, top competitive decks. So this card will have more constant use against everything, as opposed to like the Huntail or Gore Vice, where not quite as much. But it is a stage 1, so that's kind of a drawback as well. So I'll give it a 2 out of 5 overall, but I definitely could see it pretty consistently being played in fusion decks. It really just depends on what else is popular, and then what your fusion deck is actually doing if you want to include something like this. Going along, we got the Mew VMAX here. Let's start with the V, 180 HP. Energy mix for a Psychic. Search your deck for 1 energy and attach it to one of your fusion Pokemon. Then shuffle your deck. And then Psycho Jump, Psychic Colorless. 70 damage. You may shuffle this Pokemon and all cards attached to it into your deck. Dark Weakness, Fighting Resistance. 0 retreat cost, which is always a big plus in my opinion, having 0 retreat cost. So that's the V. Moving along to the VMAX, which is really what it's all about. Still has that free retreat cost. Still weak to Dark. Got that Fighting Resistance. This is going to be maybe one of the big fusion decks. From the fusion cards you've seen so far, I guess there might be more fusion cards to release, but cross fusion colors, choose an attack on one of your benched fusion Pokemon and use it as this attack. So you only need the 2 colorless energy to take an attack from one of your benched Pokemon. So it's pretty efficient. Turn 2, borrow an attack, you're using it. And we're going to get to a couple other Pokemon that have pretty decent attacks upon potentially combo with Mew VMAX. And then Psychic Max Miracle, 130 damage. Damage from this attack isn't affected by any effects on your opponent's active Pokemon, so you can get through stuff like Zamazenta or the Glaceon VMAX, so it kind of has a built-in way to deal with those. You don't have to play like an alternate attacker to combo with the fusion, cross fusion, which feels a little bit weird. It feels like that would be something that would be a little bit more healthy for the card, to be like, okay, if you want to be able to deal with those cards, you have to include this attacker now all of a sudden in your deck, and then you have to include another Pokemon. But for this, it's just like, but I guess it is double Psychic energy, but your thing costs double colorless anyway, so I'm not sure I love the fact that it has this attack. It feels like a little bit kind of overkill. Like maybe you should force them to include an attacker and get it on their bench, as opposed to just giving the attack to the Pokemon on itself. But it's neither really here nor there. But yeah, Mew VMAX, I think, like the Bolton, it seems solid. Who knows how good it'll actually be when it releases. I'm going to give this one also a 4 out of 5 on the Mew VMAX here. Definitely seems like there's something here. I mean, being able to use a bunch of different attacks usually is a pretty good thing to be able to work with, to be able to put enough of the attacks that you need for the current meta into a deck to make a solid deck. So expect a decent amount out of the Mew VMAX, but I think it's definitely very, very possible it flops. And also it is weak to Dark, which will be a little bit scary. Single Strike's pretty good. You still got to turn it just around, and then we're going to be getting that Gengar VMAX at some point, which will probably shake things up for the Mew's viability as well. Let's keep cruising. All right, Galarian Cursor, stage 1. Compulsory restoration for a Psychic. Put a basic Pokemon V from your opponent's discard pile onto their bench. Then put damage counters on that Pokemon until its remaining HP is 30. So pretty cool attack, but it's on a stage 1. You have to take a knockout initially to get a V into your opponent's discard pile while you're playing this stage 1 in your deck. So I don't know how good this card will actually be, to be honest. I think it's got a cool attack, but it doesn't really have a whole ton else to go with it besides just this attack. There's nothing really else to Yeah, I mean, if you look at the basic, there's nothing that the basic could do to combo with it. So you have to play a bunch of other stuff around this to make it work. And like I said, you have to initially like take a knockout, because if your opponent knows you play this, they're just not going to discard a V Pokemon for you to abuse this attack. And if you don't take an initial knockout, there's nothing in the discard pile for this thing to utilize. So then you just have these dead cards in your deck until that happens. It might constantly be dead because you're just not able to set up because these are here and then you're drawing more inconsistently. So I don't know. I don't see a whole ton to come out of this card. Gonna give it a 1 out of 5 for now, but I would love to be wrong and would love for this thing to make some noise. Moving along, we got the DEOXYS. That is a fusion, single, and rapid strike card. And it's got that photon burst for colors. 80 damage. If this Pokemon has fusion energy attachment, it does 80 more damage, weak to dark, fighting resistance, 1 retreat cost. So it can do 160 if it's got a fusion energy attachment, which we'll get to in a little bit, how that card works or what that card does. And then it's also single, rapid, and fusion strike. So it's all of the strikes. I don't think it adds a whole ton to it though. So overall, I don't think this card is that good. I think maybe it would be good as something to sit on your bench so Mew can take advantage of it. Doing 160 for 2 colors seems pretty decent. So but that's the only thing I see you getting value out of this card. It's just kind of a cool card though that it has all 3 of all the strikes. It's all the strikes, but I don't see it being very competitively viable. Cool card overall, but yeah, I don't see it. Don't see it be there, except maybe in the Mew deck, like I said. So 1 out of 5 for the DEOXYS. Moving right along, we got the MELOTTA. At first, when I read this card a little while ago, I was like, this card is terrible, but actually, I think it's actually pretty solid. So for Psychic Colorless, Melodious Echo, 70 damage times the number of fusion energy attached to your Pokemon. So all your Pokemon. So I don't think you're ever attacking with the MELOTTA. It's got 90 HP, dark, weak to dark, fighting resistance, retreat cost 1. But if you just get like a bunch of fusion energy in play on your Mews, and then you put this down, you can be hitting for like 280 damage potentially, or even 210 is a pretty good number to be hitting if you get 3 fusion energy in play. So actually, I think this card is pretty decent in the Mew deck. So I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 overall. So you had a combo with Mew and play it in the Mew fusion deck. I think there's definitely some viability for the MELOTTA, or maybe any fusion deck, right? And maybe a different fusion deck pops up, but the big one to look at is Mew, and the other one to potentially take a look at here is Dragonpoles. For 1 psychic energy, 150 HP. Of course, it is a stage 2. 30 damage times the number of fusion Pokemon you have in play. So if you got a, the full setup of fusion Pokemon, you're doing 180 damage. So you're pretty much 2-hit KOing anything in the format. Second attack, Psychic Colorless for 120. Just way worse than your first attack. Your first attack is so much better. And then weak to dark, fighting resistance, 0 retreat cost. Again, do these ones have 0 retreat cost? No. 0 retreat cost again, so another plus there. But yeah, doing 180 for 1 psychic energy is not bad. That's not bad at all. How good will it actually be? It's a stage 2, so it's really hard to tell for sure until it comes out. Does it actually flow well enough? But that's like a really efficient attack. That is a super efficient attack. So I could see this being pretty solid. I'm gonna give the Dragonpole a 2 out of 5 as well. Yeah, give it a 2 out of 5. Think there is some potential viability here. We'll see how good it ends up being when it comes out. But yeah, it's a stage 2, so it's hard to want to get overly hyped about it. But I think there's some potential there for sure. Let's keep cruising here, and on to, I will talk about the Obstagoon for just a second. Gonna be a 1 out of 5. 170 HP, stage 2. First attack, Dark Shush, 30 damage. Choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks. They can't use that attack during your opponent's next turn. And then Merciless Strike. For 1 dark, 60 damage plus. If your opponent's active Pokemon already has any damage counters on it, this attack does 90 more damage. So you're going to be comboing this, of course, with Zigzagoon that already does ping damage. You might play this with Inteleon because you might need some more ping damage later on. So it's doing 150, and then with the ping damage, you should be able to get up to that 2-hit KO number on VMAXs pretty easily. But stage 2, you got to get those pings set up if they have any kind of healing. The attack is super efficient for 1 dark. But when you can kind of compare it to like the Dragonpole just needs a bunch of fusion Pokemon in play, which should be a little bit easier to get. It can hit a little bit harder, the Dragonpole can, and then it doesn't need that ping damage set up at all. So they kind of feel like they're pretty close. Also, it doesn't have free retreat cost. So Obstagoon, weak to grass, 2 retreat cost. So you hate to see that. So it feels like Dragonpole is just kind of a better Obstagoon almost when I like kind of compared them earlier. So I'm gonna give the Obstagoon, yeah, like I said, 1 out of 5. Don't see it being super viable, but it at least is interesting enough to talk about. Hoopa V, basic Pokemon, 220 HP, ability double face. As long as Pokemon is in play, it's both psychic and dark. And then Shadow Impact for dark colors, 170 damage, put 3 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon. So quite a bit of damage to put out there. And of course, this will be probably comboed, probably not, it probably won't be its own deck, or won't be played in anything. 2 retreat cost, grass weakness. It'll probably comboed with Mew. This might be one of Mew's main attackers, doing 170 damage, 2 hit KOs. most, if not all, VMAXs once again. And then to put 3 damage counters into play, you know, can help clean up a 2-hit KO if there was some healing involved, or just kind of put some pressure on some smaller stuff in play as well. So this might be one of Fusion Mew's main attackers here, is this Hoopa V. We'll have to wait and see for sure, but definitely seems like that might be the way Mew leans as one of its more aggressive options for attackers, is this Hoopa, because that's a lot of damage. 170 and 3 damage counters wherever you want. That's pretty good. So I'm going to give the Hoopa a 3 out of 5 overall. It does only really combo with Mew. Like, I don't see it attacking on its own, but it is very powerful with the Mew. So yeah, 3 out of 5 for the Hoopa, because it does combo very well with the Mew VMAX. Now let's get to, I think, maybe my only 5 out of 5 here, which is this Genesect V, and this card is insane. Fusion system. Once during your turn before you attack, you might draw cards from your deck until the number of cards in your hand equals the number of fusion Pokemon you have in play. So let's just say you have 6 fusion Pokemon in play, and 2 of them are Genesects, and then you have 4 card hand. You can draw 2 cards, then you can play 4 cards, and then you can draw 4 more cards, because it doesn't say you can only use 1 fusion system each turn. You can use multiple fusion systems for each Genesect you have in play, which is just, that's a lot of draw power. You could have 3 Genesects in play, 4. I mean, at that point, if you're playing it with Mew, you'd run out of things to attack with, but you can also just use Genesect's attack with Mew. It's got this Techno Blast for Metal Colorless, which is a little bit hard to set up on the Genesect, but for the Mew, for just double colorless to do 210 damage, even if you can't attack during your next turn, that's pretty good. So yeah, this card is absurd. This is just an insane ability. The ability is just really good. The ability is just insane. That's like the biggest thing here, is that the ability is so crazy good. The fusion system, yeah, 5 out of 5 on the Genesect V. Weak to fire, grass resistance, 2 retreat cost. But yeah, gonna combo very well on any fusion deck, whether it be the Dragonpoles. And this might be one of the things that gives Dragonpoles a little bit of life as well, is like this much draw power in a stage 2 deck might help it overcome those inconsistencies pretty well. So we'll have to, that could be one of the main driving forces to make Dragonpole good, is just this Genesect might be enough to kind of push through the inconsistencies with this insane amount of draw power in the deck through the Genesect V. So Genesect V, 5 out of 5, crazy card, best card in this set for sure. There's like a power level. It's just so ridiculously good. Let's move along though before I keep talking about it. And I think we're going to be getting into, I did want to mention Dunsparce, 60 HP. Give this one a 1 out of 5, because there are some conditions, some pretty big conditions to make it viable. Each player's colorless Pokemon in play has no weakness as an ability. Then colorless will roll out for 30, so irrelevant, won't retreat cost, and then fighting resistance or fighting weakness. But yeah, if colorless Pokemon are good and fighting Pokemon are good, you can play this in your deck and you're no longer weak to fighting, which is pretty cool. So this card is a kind of a cool card to just have around for, I mean, colorless for sure, but other types I'm sure would love to have this kind of card in the format for themselves. But colorless is the one that gets this Dunsparce. So yeah, 1 out of 5 to the Dunsparce. Definitely potential there. We just need a colorless deck to be good, and then we need fighting decks to be good at the same time. And this guy will see play, but pretty conditional conditions to get there. Smeargle I will mention as well. Fusion Strike card, 70 HP, trash sketch for a colorless. Choose up to 2 Fusion Strike trainer cards from your discard pile, show them to your opponent, and put them into your hand. Colorless for 80 on a tail wrap, not very good. Fighting, weakness, and then 1 retreat cost. Overall, 1 out of 5. I don't see you ever being able to really efficiently use your turn to use the first attack, but maybe there will be some matchups, or it'll be worth playing, because there is enough situations where it comes up where it's like, I can take this turn off because getting these cards back is so game changing that I'd rather have these cards than not like do damage for my turn. So Smeargle, maybe it makes the cut. I'm not really convinced that it would. And of course you can use it through Mew, but even then you're still taking your turn off, and then you have a VMAX interactive, so it might even be worse than just sending the Smeargle up itself, right? So give him a 1 out of 5. Definitely an interesting attack at the very least. Cruisin' Gradient VMAX. I'm not gonna mention him. All right, Cross Receiver. It's basically a Via Seeker reprint, but there's quite a few more conditions to it. You must play 2 Cross Receiver at the same time. The effect only works once for both cards. Put a Pokemon or supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. So you have to find 2 Cross Receiver at the same time, and then you have to play them both down to get a Pokemon or a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. So it's just very costly to get back something that you could just play more of, probably. So if you're running into situations where you're running out of boss, or you're running out of a V or a VMAX, maybe just play some Pokemon Recovery, or just play another boss. So this one I give a 1 out of 5 overall. Cross Switcher, on the other hand, this is the other card I was going to give a 5 out of 5. Cross Switcher, item card. I should mention that as well. I mean, I guess that makes, you guys should be able to, yeah, it's an item card on the Cross Receiver. Cross Switcher, item card. You must play 2 copies of Cross Switcher at the same time. but the effect is quite a bit stronger than Cross Receiver. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with their active, so basically a Gust effect. If you do switch your active with one of your bench Pokemon, which can be a hindrance sometimes depending on the situation and when you draw into them, but overall, you should be able to easily play around that, or it's just kind of a plus that you get to switch your side of the field as well. So this card, I also give a 5 out of 5, and I think combos specifically very well with the potential of the draw power for Genesect V. One of the problems with this card can be you got to find two at once. So any way to draw cards is just really, really good, because if you have one, if you're drawing into more cards, but you're not losing that first one, higher chance you'll get both. Also combos very well, obviously, with the Inteleon engine, because it is an item card. Drizzile can find it. The Rapid Strike Inteleon can find, or not the Rapid Strike, the Shady Dealings Inteleon can find both of them at once if you wanted it to. So potentially very good with Inteleon. I think combos really well with just the potential of the draw power from Genesect. I think this card is very good. It might not be that great initially because we still have Boss's Orders, but as we get more cards in the format, or eventually when Boss's Orders rotate, I think I could see Cross Switcher becoming the new Gust effect, and that just being kind of what takes over. But yeah, Cross Switcher, 5 out of 5, super powerful card, despite having Boss in the format, just on its own. You just look at it and you don't know bosses in the format, this card becomes way better. But obviously we do have boss in the format, so how much will it be played is kind of the question while we have boss around, which is probably going to be less because we do have boss. But I still think the card is insanely powerful overall in the grand scheme of things. Moving right along, we got the power tablets. During this turn, your fusion Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. I give this a 4 out of 10. It's basically an electro power for fusion Pokemon. But once again, it kind of comes down to just numbers, right? This isn't always consistently going to be good. I think with Pikarom, we saw that with the lower HP of stuff, that electro power was consistently very good. But now that we got VMAXs still doing 30 more damage, might not be enough to consistently be a factor in the format. So I give it a 4 out of 10 overall, because it's definitely possible. It's like if you need 4 of them to ever have it be an impact on a game, you probably just won't play it. But if like 1 or 2 of them do make the difference in getting some KOs, then you're probably going to be running 4 of them, because having those 1 or 2 throughout the game could make a big difference. So I have to wait and see how much this actually affects the math on everything. So yeah, 4 out of 5 on the power tablets, but doing 30 more damage for a single item card is always going to be pretty good overall. So, but we'll have to wait and see. And like I said, initially it might not be great, or like I'm saying, initially it might not be great, but as we kind of move on, it might get a little bit better. Moving down further, we got Sydney. Your opponent reveals their hand. Supporter cards now. Reveals their hand. Discard up to 2 in combinations of stadium cards, special energy, or tool cards you find there. So pretty situational, where you'd need to discard specific things to prevent your opponent from doing something. Your opponent would also have to have those cards in their hand, and like they would have to care that you discarded them overall. So this card, I give a 1 out of 5. I think there's definitely some viability for it to play this card in control type decks, or some kind of more disruption based decks. But I think in general, in attacking decks, trying to draw 6 prize cards, you won't have this thing see play. So very limited to the amount of archetypes it'd be included in, and even then, how good is it really is the question that would have to be figured out. So yeah, 1 out of 5 on the Sydney. Also, Sparkle, choose up to 2 of your fusion Pokemon in play. For each Pokemon you chose, search your deck for a fusion energy and attaches to that Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. So normally I would give this a little bit lower of a rating, but because Genesect V exists and you have so much draw power outside of your draw supporter for the turn, it makes it a lot more viable to play a supporter like this for your turn. So I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5 overall, because there is Genesect to play with it alongside it, and gives it a lot more potential use. Like there's a lot higher chance that you're going to be using this card because you have Genesect to draw you cards for your turn. You're already getting everything you need. Let's get some extra energy into play. Why not with the Elsa Sparkle? So this card I actually think is a lot better. Yeah, just a lot better than it normally would get, because Genesect will be in the format. But it is in the format, so I'm going to go ahead and give it the higher rating overall. And I'm going to give the same thing to the Chili, Silent, and Cress supporter. Search your deck for up to 3 Fusion Strike Pokemon, reveal them, and put them to your hand. Shuffle your deck. So it says Pokemon, and they also go to your hand, which is like 2 big factors. So you can get VMAXs, and also if your bench is full, like usually with a lot of supporters, it's like get these Pokemon, put them on your bench. So it only gets basics, but it gets, you can get VMAXs, evolutions, whatever, and they go to your hand. Once again, combos super well with Genesect. And I'm actually going to give this card a 4 out of 5 because it can go find Genesect or multiple Genesect. So let's just say you're playing a Mew V or a Mew V Max fusion deck, and who knows, maybe even play like 4 of these in your Mew fusion deck, and you're like, oh, you open your Mew V and you're like, all right, play this turn 1, I'm gonna go ahead and find myself double Genesect and another Mew V, or I don't know, something else, and then you're just like Genesect draw cards, and then you just got like everything you needed for your turn. So this one I give a 4 out of 5 because I think finding the Pokemon has a lot more consistent viability throughout games, and definitely see this being played, or potentially more heavily played than something like the Elsa Sparkle, but I could see, because of Genesect, your deck just consists of these kind of supporters, and you don't even really play ordinary like Marnie and Research and stuff. You just play like 4 Genesect, find those as soon as you possibly can, play this card, find your other Pokemon, accelerate your energy through this, and it could be really cool actually. The fusion deck engines could be really cool because Genesect offers so much draw power turn to turn potentially that you can afford to play these supporters for turn because it doesn't actually set you behind. It almost makes your turns perfect. So yeah, kind of excited to try out the fusion engine when everything does come out. But yeah, 4 out of 5 on this one, and then yeah, 3 out of 4 on the Elsa Sparkle. Moving along, we got Skatepark. Only stadium card in this set. Whenever a player's active Pokemon retreats, that player puts any basic energy used to pay that retreat cost into their hand instead of the discard pile. 1 out of 5. I don't see it being great because you could just play an air balloon or a switch and keep your energy in play. Sure, you get the energy back to your hand, but that also means that you just lose energy in play overall. So now when you go to attach for your turn again, you just have less energy in play than you would have. So Skatepark, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5. But it is the only stadium we're getting out of the set, which is actually a little bit sad. I want more stadiums to be in the format. We've got Chaotic Swell. That's not in the format anymore. Let's get rid of these. Let's get some more good stadiums in the format now that Chaotic Swell isn't there to disrupt them. Fusion Energy, really good energy card. You can only put it on one of your fusion Pokemon. If it isn't a fusion Pokemon, you discard it. While in play, this card provides every type of energy, so basically a rainbow energy, but only provides one at the time, of course. And then the Pokemon this card is attached to isn't affected by abilities from your opponent's Pokemon. So, I mean, the big one that comes to mind right now is you can't get quick shooting, which could just be huge, right? So not being able to get quick shooting, and whatever else comes up. I don't know if there's anything in this set specifically that would come up that this would protect against, but it's just kind of like, you're going to be playing 4 of these anyways. This is like one of the best extra effects to ever have on an energy, I feel like, ever. Like, this is just so insanely powerful. So 5 out of 5 on the fusion energy, because yeah, this extra effect, not being able to affect it by your opponent's abilities, is just so strong overall. Just in general, it's such a good in general extra effect to have. If we look at the Rapid Strike Rainbow Energy and the Single Strike Rainbow Energy, one of them says, I forget what they even do, but they're not as good as this. They're not as good as this fusion energy. This is just such an insanely strong added effect to have. It's not even necessary. It could have just been a Rainbow Energy that can only be attached to Fusion Strike Pokemon, and that would have been good enough. But then they went ahead and threw this thing on here and says you can't be affected by any of your opponent's abilities, and it's just an insane card. So 5 out of 5 on the Fusion Energy. And guys, that's going to wrap it up for my Fusion Arts set review. I don't know when we're getting these cards. I think we'll be getting some of them, maybe not all of them, in November, I believe. So we're a little ways out from when we actually get these cards, but want to give you guys my thoughts ahead of time as soon as possible, now that we have a better idea of what we'll be getting for some of these cards. And yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, give it a like. If you're enjoying the content, you're new here, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell, and I'll see you tomorrow.